If I told you I have a friend who is a tech entrepreneur, what image comes to mind? Pause and think about that. Let me guess. Someone from Silicon Valley, coding late at night, who became a sensation with a billion-dollar valued company. This person is often nerdy and dresses simply in hoodies. But it's okay because he is likely an Ivy dropout and super smart, and also likely to be a white male. If you said yes to any of these descriptions, I'll say this episode is about to help you expand your awareness of all about tech entrepreneurs. And yes, no worries if you didn't realize this until now. Many may not have realized this because when you research online for tech entrepreneurs, we often come across someone who is a white male in hoodies. But tech entrepreneurs are more than people in one city or one demographic, which is why today we're diving into everything about tech entrepreneurs. Yes, you don't even have to be an Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg to be a tech entrepreneur, and that is an excellent fact. Hi, this is Monica Kang, and you're listening to Curious Monica.
I literally have a negative bank account and I can't buy a cup of coffee on the way to my office where I'm running a company that's valued at $3 million right now.
As a matter of fact, I've made the decision, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, because I always check everybody's portfolios of companies that they have. And I will know whether or not you have any people of color. And I will say, I realize that you've not invested in a founder of color. And I've bet on me to get us here. And I'm looking for a partner who will bet on us to get to that next level.
I literally paused and asked myself, business? Business, okay, I'm actually running a business. And that somehow actually clicked. And then that's where I started seeing things at a different light. And then one thing led to another. The business grew. I sold it off a couple of years later.
It's not just about finding anybody. It's really about how dedicated are they to the company and what type of skill sets do they have. And I really say, okay, I'll just do this myself, or I'll just focus on telling me I can hire the right person or find the right person to do this instead of just bringing anyone on board.
Now I'm a true entrepreneur. I run everything on myself, from sales to administrative to my own flow charts and my own business plans and things of that nature. So, it's a lot, and I've been doing it for a while, but you do learn as you go along, and reaching out for help is things that I've used throughout my career, and it's great. I wouldn't change it.
And I started asking questions and I'm trying to find a way, but they get frustrated sometimes, and you perceive that. But it's like, sometimes you don't have the answer.
No programmer in the world is perfect. They'll make a lot of mistakes. They'll have bugs. Software always have bugs, meaning it wasn't built properly because there's so many things that you have to think about when you build it. And the one thing that I learned is like a lot of beginners, when you run into these problems, you tend to panic a lot. And I think this is true with like pretty much any industry. But you tend to panic a lot, as an entrepreneur in the beginning stages, you tend to panic a lot. But as you go on, you kind of get used to it. And then you stop panicking and you start just going into your problem solving mode. Like, okay, well, here's the problem. And what do I do to solve this problem? Like, here's step one.
Hi, welcome to Curious Monica by Innovators Box, where we study how different people thrive at different jobs. I'm your host, Monica Kang, and today I'm excited to dive into tech entrepreneurs. Who is a tech entrepreneur? How do they become one? And what does it mean to be one? First, let's start with the basics. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? This somewhat simple question used to always make me stumble because while I understood the fundamentals of what an entrepreneur was, I wasn't sure if I could describe myself as an entrepreneur because I didn't see entrepreneurs who looked like me. Female, Asian, and a non-engineer. An entrepreneur is essentially someone who founded an organization and continues to actively run their own company. An entrepreneur, though, is essentially someone who founded an organization and continues to actively run their own company. So a tech entrepreneur is someone who has a business that is based on technology. Think about any founder who is actively leading a company that happens to revolve around technology. Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, Eric Yuan at Zoom, or Leah Solvan at TaskRabbit. Individuals like Sarah Blakely at Spanx, Oprah Winfrey, and John Damon from Shark Tank are also great examples of entrepreneurs. But so are all the other people you may have never seen in the newspapers. The mom and pop shops, the restaurant business owners, and yes, even the flower shop owner down the street. I realized how important it was to first recognize how entrepreneurs are everywhere, not just in Silicon Valley. In today's episode, I'm excited to introduce you to 5 of my tech entrepreneur friends doing impactful work, who also happens to be outside of Silicon Valley. Some knew they wanted to get into business early on, while some didn't. Marcus is someone who knew he wanted to start a business. He just didn't know what kind of business until later, when he faced a very challenging moment in his life.
I knew I was going to be some kind of entrepreneur. I didn't know what kind of entrepreneur I would grow to be, but I am grateful that my journey has led me here. It started when I was a kid selling candy and annihilators and blow pops on a school bus. It graduated into me expanding my market into Snicker bars because I had students requesting chocolate. The market will always tell you what it wants, right? I grew that 6th grade business into a high school business that introduced me into weed sales. And then in my neighborhood where everyone smoked weed and there was a growing population of people who were smoking crack cocaine, I started selling crack as well. Just a couple of weeks after I started getting introduced to how to sell drugs, I made a decision with my best friend to steal a car at gunpoint in a shopping mall parking lot as a 15-year-old kid. And that decision at 15 years old on my sophomore year in high school landed me in front of a judge with my mom and my sister standing just a few feet behind me as they listened to me get sentenced to 8 years in adult maximum security prison. That changed everything.
This may not sound like a typical way into entrepreneurship, but it's really important to note these details to understand why Marcus Bullock knew his company had to exist. While he was in prison, what helped him stay connected was heartfelt letters from his mother saying hello, expressing how much she cared for him, and saying how she believed he will be back safe and will live a bright future. Marcus recognized how powerful these letters were to him and knew what it could mean for others. This is why he recognized Flickshop needed to exist, an app that could send a postcard and message to loved ones that are incarcerated.
When we launched Flickshop, it was out of an opportunity that I saw because my best friends were in prison and I wanted to be able to send them pictures when I went on vacations. I didn't see any other way to be able to make it happen outside of finding a mobile app that allowed me to be able to do it, because it was just too hard to like sit down and write a letter and then find an envelope and then have to go to the post office to buy postage. You got to Google an address. There were just too many steps that will force Monday to turn into Tuesday, Tuesday to turn into 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks turn to 6 months. And I still haven't written that letter. And I don't even know how to print pictures from my phone. I have no idea how to print pictures from my phone. Right. And so like because of that massive barrier, and I had 3 or 4 of my best friends that were still in those cells, like living and waiting and hoping and praying that I would just be able to send them a small glimpse of this amazing new life that I was living. I looked in the App Store to try to find a solution and I didn't see one. We started Flickshop.
Marcus is humble. Today, as the founder and CEO of Flickshop, he helps inmates connect to their loved ones through his app. ESPN describes his app as the closest thing 2.1 million inmates have to social media platforms. It's understandable why key influencers like artist John Legend, former NBA star Baron Davis, are excited for Marcus's work. Boeing also announced just last week its $250,000 investment in Flickshop to support their initiative further. Flickshop gives many inmates at 2,200 prisons and jails around the country in the United States to means to stay connected. Okay, but the why of the company is one thing. How do you build an app? Marcus realized that was the very question he had to figure out.
I'm Googling literally like how to build a mobile app. Or Newsweek at the time had one of the top mobile apps. I Googled like who has the top mobile app and who built their mobile app, because it was hard to find developers. This was back in like 2011 and we launched in 2012 when, third-party apps were still brand new for the app stores. I found out who built Newsweek's app and I called them, this development company. I'm like, hey, I have an app I want to build. And they're like, all right, well, who are you and what company are you calling from? And I'm like, my name is Marcus and I'm calling from my office. I run a painting business, but I want to start an app that can help me connect to people who are in prison. And they were like, wait, what? Why would you want to connect with people in prison? I'm like, well, clearly you aren't the developer for me. Hung up. And I called the next app developer and then the next one. And while I started to learn what the vernacular was, there was verbiage I didn't even know, right? I didn't know. People ask me, well, who are the profiles? Who's the avatar that you're appealing to? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I want to build an app that can send pictures to my friends that's locked up.
This humble beginning and clear mission led Marcus to not only build the app, but also find the right partners who believed in his work. So yes, it's possible to build an impactful tech company even when you aren't the tech guru. Deshauna Spencer shares why your why and vision matters. Because hey, building a business is not an easy thing.
When I was in school, this was definitely not something that I thought I would be doing, to be quite honest, especially because I left school. I mean, Netflix existed, but they were still not in this realm of like streaming.
Meet Deshauna Spencer, founder and CEO of Quality TV, the go-to streaming media platform for Black filmmakers and Black audiences. Founded in 2017, TechCrunch described Quality TV as Netflix for Black people, by Black people, starring Black people. And today has over 40,000 subscribers watching 500 plus films and shorts from independent Black creators. With her background in journalism and insights into her own media consumption, Deshauna knew why Quality TV needed to exist. She knew how much Black content was lacking in media, and I asked her to share more. Why is Hollywood really missing the beat on diversity? She brings up a movie many of you may have heard of, The Help, a story of a young white woman aspiring journalist and how her relationships with two Black females influenced her thinking during the Civil Rights Movement in 1963 Jackson, Mississippi.
I would say one film that may be a good example of that is The Help. The book and the film had good intentions, right, about this white woman who wanted to amplify her caregiver when she was a child, I think like in Mississippi. But at the same time, it wasn't written for Black people. Not to say you have to write things for a particular group, but obviously it was written for white women, like to me. And even Viola Davis, she talked about how she regrets doing that film just based on how it turned out. And when it comes to like the white lens, I would say it's written in a way to make white people feel comfortable and feel better maybe about Black history and how their ancestors, and all of them, of course, I can't put the other one glaze, but how certain white people back in the day treated people of color. And so typically a lot of films that make it in mainstream media may have, I would say, a white savior type of, wow, okay, this would be better because a white person won't feel bad when they walk out of the movie theaters. They'll know that, well, there was that one white person who saved the day for the Black person. And so I feel like The Help is a really good example of that.
Speaking the truth, Deshauna, let's take a step back. Take a look at anything you consume. Who is it by and who is it for? As an Asian American, I've been very aware when I consume content how it tends to portray Asian Americans or Asians by a certain image that is not fully true. And as Deshauna said, not portraying people's full, colorful voice on screen is a serious problem because that is where we build unconscious bias, first impressions, and awareness of others. Instead of watching something that simply makes us feel good, we should be watching to learn while still also having fun. Truth matters, says Dushana.
The media is afraid to offend white people because if they offend them or teach them their truths, then that will mean less money at the box office. And so instead of focusing on how much money they can make at the box office and how certain people will feel, instead of doing that, it should be let's tell the truth.
This is why Kwali, which means truth in Swahili, aims to tell all sides of the Black experience.
People outside of the US who stream Kwali TV, they're seeing a different side of the Black American experience that they may not see, kind of what you mentioned, where you're from, right? And so I remember like talking with some of our filmmakers or even customers like in Senegal or Ghana. The first time came to America, even they had negative thoughts about Black Americans because of what they saw in mainstream media, or like we all can rap or whatever, we're all living in the hood, and they were just so negative. And until they actually went to these same schools as other Black Americans, until they actually interacted, they had a very different view. And so that's one of the things I think we're doing with Kwali TV is that we're showing a different side, we're telling different stories about Black people that I think mainstream media is not really focusing on because they're just focused on the lowest common denominator and this one brush of what it means to be Black in America.
A clear why will help you find your path. And yes, building a streaming company without a technology background was not easy, but she knew she had other expertise that was really crucial. Overseeing the content development.
It's been super rocky where, you don't know where your money's coming from. But in essence, I was very intentional. You don't really know like where the intention is going to take you, I would say, because like I said, my initial dream was to start this online magazine. I thought that would be my legacy. But, you do pivot. And so some of the things that I thought I would be doing, I'm not doing now. Like I'm not writing as much and I'm not really in news at all at this point. That's where I thought I would be. But there were other things that I still feel like as a journalist and as someone who's in media, there are some skills about understanding content. I've always had a really great eye for content and finding good content, and that hasn't changed. I feel like I've always managed content in my ever since I was in college, and so it was just news. It was just writing. Now it's film, and so I feel like in that sense, that has sort of been the single thing that has kind of carried me throughout my journey.
A good eye is powerful indeed, which leads to how she builds her team. Not every fan is necessarily the right team member.
I used to sort of have this mentality of the first thing that's smoking, I will let the person be a part of the team. And I've learned that that's not always necessarily the best way to do things, because sometimes you need the right person on your team. And even though you may have a small budget or don't have a lot of money, a lot of times we compromise what we need just to have someone on the team. I just need someone who can do this. And I know I don't have a lot of money to give them, so I'll just take what I can. And I sort of changed that sort of mindset in saying that, okay, it's not just about finding anybody and just having a warm body, next to me at night for my company. It's really about how dedicated are they to the company and what type of skill sets do they have. And I really say, okay, I'll just do this myself, or I'll just focus on telling me I can hire the right person or find the right person to do this instead of just, bringing anyone on board.
This is why I also appreciate the phrase, hire slow, fire fast. Your people matter because that's the roof of what you build, no matter what it is. And Kimberly Moore reminds us it's not just people you hire that you should note, but also who you work with as an investor.
Corporate America is a very different thing. As an entrepreneur, raising money, I feel it like I have not felt it before. As a matter of fact, I've made the decision that in ending my pitch to sort of, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, because I always check everybody's portfolios of companies that they have. And I will know whether or not you have any people of color. And I will say, I realize that you've not invested in a founder of color, and I've bet on me to get us here, and I'm looking for a partner who will bet on us to get to that next level. So if a diverse founder doing something that's really solving a problem is of interest to you, I'd like to still continue the conversation. Because I think it's important to state the obvious of what's going on. And sometimes people don't know they have a bias, right? They don't know. And so let's just cut the chase. And it doesn't bother me at all. I want you to know that I know you don't have any founders of color in your portfolio. Just want to let you know. And if that's something that you think is important, then let's continue to talk.
Addressing the elephant in the room. Yes! Kimberly Moore is the founder and CEO of Go Together, a business that supports children's safety and access to education. Today, parents struggle getting their children where they need to go safely while juggling their demanding personal and family schedules. This is why Go Together builds carpool software services like Carpool to School that over 16,000 users at 41 schools in 19 states use across the United States. And building this meaningful company as a Black female is not easy when more than 80% of the ventures don't have a single Black investor. And just 1% of venture-funded startup founders are Black, according to Crunchbase. I asked her what often happens in the pitching process and what happens when people don't get it.
This is really great work. And I had no idea that this is a problem. You know, like you had said earlier, it's not a problem that a lot of people think is really a huge pain point because they see school buses riding around all the time and kids are getting to school. But the numbers tell everything, and parents are predominantly drive their kids to school, and only a third of all students actually ride a bus, and the incredible inefficiencies. So being able to lay out the problem and how our solution meets that problem in a place that parents are already trying to solve it, you know, sort of takes away, oh, it's not a good fit. Then the next thing is, I'm talking about our traction. We've got 48 schools on our platform. We're generating revenue. We've got the second largest private school. So I'm sort of, you know, trying to hit all the marks of what people say they want. And the revenue model is a B2B SaaS company. And so after going through all of that, talking about my team, too early is a regular one, or the follow-up is via email, and I don't get any specifics of you know, why we're not moving forward. And I ask for them. So some of it is, I want to know the feedback because I can only get better. We can only get better if we get that feedback. And, you know, it's not hurting my feelings, right? It's your money. You can invest in whatever you want to, but I would like to know why you don't want to invest in me.
Entrepreneurship, especially as a tech entrepreneur that needs funding, is not for the faint at heart. Being okay facing multiple rejections and conscious bias and finding the solutions fast enough for your audience is not easy. I asked her what helps her continue to stand back up again despite these challenges.
The barriers that it's removing for kids and being able to see the difference education makes. And so in a story, I met a young lady. She was 16 at the time. I met her in a juvenile detention center, 7 felony arrests. And she was like, I can't do this anymore. I want to live another life. Miss Moore, can you help me? Well, okay, sure. What is that? She said, I need rides to go to this place and that place. And I was like, fine, I'll take you. And wind up, her family didn't have a car. She's an immigrant, oldest of 5. And it just got to be just what we did. Well, I can share with you that she graduated from college. And in May of this year, she graduates from pharmacy school. So that is a real life example of the difference between being able to get where you need to go and not.
That's incredible. Wow. Changing others' lives. And more changes are needed. What do you do when others don't get the technology that needs to be developed? What helps you?
I've been in technology for quite some time. Initially in the wireless industry, right when it first really started to scale. Not many people in my friend groups were in technology in that kind of way, very cutting edge technology at the time. And it can be a little isolating because you don't have the same conversations that you're having in the workplace if you're in HR or if you're in corporate finance or something like that. So I tell you what I think has really helped me. I am the daughter of a retired colonel. My late father was in the military for 30 years, and being the only had been a regular experience for me from little girl on up. And we call it today emotional intelligence. I think that I developed some emotional intelligence about the rooms that I was in and to not see my onlyness as something that was bad. I'm not even sure my parents told me that. I just kind of figured that out. And, sometimes when you're the only, you actually get attention because you are the only. And it's how you use that attention that can make it work for you or not work for you.
The power of EQ is the source of resilience. This is why Jan Wong also shares how investing in yourself as a person is the key to succeeding in any business, no matter what age you start it.
I've never imagined myself doing what I'm doing today. It's quite crazy actually, because when I was growing up, I came from a very normal, average family. My parents are the typical Asian parents, go get a job, become a doctor, become an engineer, become an accountant. I pretty much grew up in that kind of an environment. My teacher in primary school actually looked at me and my parents and said, "Hey, Jen is not going to make it in life. He's bad in studies. You better do something about him."
Jan Wong is a serial entrepreneur. Since age 17, he founded 7 companies and has been recognized numerously as one of the top business leaders in Malaysia. Open Minds is one of the companies he founded, and we spoke with him about how he built his company office culture in our last year workplace episode. It's my other podcast where I study workplace changes, trends, and challenges, which you'll love as well. So please check it out. I wanted to bring Jan back to today's conversation because how he became a tech entrepreneur is a story I felt more should hear, as it was a reminder that everyone can do it if you put your mind to it. And yes, as Jan said, you don't have to get the best grades to be an entrepreneur, but how you think does matter.
I started thinking about what I really wanted to do in life. I thought that, hey, if I'm going to get a job, I might as well get a job that I really like. And at that point of time, I still am in the employee mindset. I weren't thinking about starting your own company. That is like a remote thing, like far, far away. Very typical, I would say maybe 20 years in the future, maybe I would like to start a company. Maybe I would like to do something different, but not then, for sure. I was just 17. I went into college, but I wanted to do something a little bit more. And then that's where I started exploring different part-time jobs available, right? I looked at becoming a barista. I looked at giving out flyers by the street, becoming an event coordinator, things like that, where typically what college kids used to do. But then I thought to myself, these are things that are not out of the ordinary. Even if they put it in the CV, my potential employer will one day just look at it and say, okay, another guy at McD's, another guy at Starbucks. So what is the unique selling proposition for this particular guy? So I thought, okay, let's take it up a notch. Let's just try exploring a new area that I'm unfamiliar with, just to pick up some skills. That's it. So the key thing here that I made was that I made a decision to just pick up something to own my skills. That's all. It wasn't even a business. So I thought, okay, since I'm in IT school, let me do something related to IT. And then that's where I started off learning how to fix people's PC, how to make PCs run faster, how to uninstall stuff, how to install stuff. And then that generally escalated over a period of time where the circle of my clients grew from my friends to my peers within college, and then also to just the entire university. And people started knowing me for that particular business.
Wow, that's incredible. Was there any turning point that really helped you reframe from doing this for fun to being an entrepreneur?
The turning point, it was about 6 to 8 months in maybe, where one of my friends from a senior class came to me and said, "Hey Jen, how are you?" Very typical catch up, but "Hey Jen, how are you? How's your business?" At that point, I literally paused and asked myself, business? Business, okay, I'm actually running a business. And that somehow actually clicked. And then that's where I started seeing things at a different light. And then one thing led to another. The business grew. I sold it off a couple of years later. And then the journey continued to many, many other businesses until today, where I represent Open Mind. So yeah, accidental entrepreneur, if you do call that.
Wow, accidental, yes, but totally resilient and hardworking. Not only did he continue to push forward, but also connected the dots to hear what his customers and audience was saying. I asked him, now, looking back, what helped him build the resilience and be the entrepreneur he is today. We also dove into the importance of the mental well-being of an entrepreneur.
Healthy state of mind that could very well pose as many problems. And I say this because, we have read so many different articles of different entrepreneurs hitting this brick wall and then eventually they committed suicide. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, one of my friend in Singapore actually did just that. He's an entrepreneur, he's helping many people, he's very positive, but he just took his life in his apartment. It's crazy. And things like that are still happening today. And I echo you to say that there's definitely not enough awareness here. But the problem is this. I think there are two elements to all these problems. Number one is that the entrepreneur himself need to actually have enough time for himself to reflect on what's going on in the situation. It's very easy to get sucked into the challenge, sucked into the problem, because an entrepreneurship mindset, one of it is to solve problems, right? To find opportunities to get yourself out of it. And if you just invest yourself 100% into that, sometimes you don't realize that you are stuck. And sometimes you don't realize it's actually time to request for help, and it's okay to ask for help. So that first point of admitting that, stopping and admitting that, hey, look, I think it's time to speak to somebody, that plays a very, very big part.
Yes. Asking for help feels hard when you feel like you have to have all the answers. On top of all of that, as John says, even with good intention, unless you take care of yourself, you will not only burn out, but could feel emotionally de-stressed. What's the second part?
But the second part is also a consequence of the first. As we invest all our time and effort and sacrifice and put all these keywords of what the world defines as an entrepreneur onto an entrepreneur, you realize that basically his life is his work. And what that means is that you don't actually have very good close friends that you can open up not only your personal life, but also your career life, that they can understand and they could encourage you and they can support you. And to me personally, that is the most challenging element to build, but yet the most important, because that's where your support systems are. And I went through a very tough period like that as well, because I was invested 200% to my business. And then when a situation happened, when I'm very personally demotivated, whether from a career front or personal front, I look behind me and I realized that, hey, I actually don't know who I can speak to. My emotional struggles, my friends would just say, yeah lah, you're an entrepreneur. This is part of your job, suck it up and go do it. If I speak to somebody else on the career front, they'll say, oh, these are the business challenges. And then they'll try to just do a SWOT analysis with me, do a 5 forces, draw up some wheels and all that, and try to just get me through systematically, And at certain times, that is not what I need. I just needed somebody to be alongside me and say, hey, Jen, you can do this. I went through it as well. Let's do this together. Do you need to come up for coffee more often? I'm available. But I did not have that person. And to me, you need to have different groups of people to support you in different parts of your life, whether it's a spiritual aspect, whether it's a personal, emotional aspect, whether it's a career aspect. It's never too late or too early to start building these support systems.
True statements indeed. Building a business is a tough journey. You have to make so many decisions every minute that could both help you thrive or risk everything. You need a strong optimistic mindset. Optimism, because you are not ignoring the bad moments, but rather being prepared for all of what may come. This is why Jonathan Chun also speaks about why the number one reason why entrepreneurs fail is because they did not realize how hard it was going to be and give up too early.
Ultimately, all this news and the movie and the media, they portray these startups in a very glamorous point of view. There's one trap that people fall into a lot. And this trap is when you create a solution and you try to fit it into a problem. Okay? Now, I see this all the time. People, they have this idea about a solution. They create something, this awesome thing. And then they don't know what it solves, but they're going to find something that it solves because it's such an awesome solution. People don't realize this because they have a great idea, they build it, they don't really talk to customers, or maybe they find people who don't want it. So they ignore those customers and then they look for some other customers who might want it. I mean, if you've gotten that far and you're getting customers saying, I don't want this, but I want something else, but then you ignore them, I know it sucks, but you got to scrap that product and listen to what your customers say.
Jonathan is also a serial entrepreneur, one that specialized in AI and machine learning. He sold 2 out of 4 companies he founded since college, including a dating site he sold within 2 weeks of launching. He is most well known as the co-founder of FiscoNote, a platform that uses cutting-edge AI and machine learning to change the way the world looks at open data, and Pathover, a platform that solves the last-mile problem in the restaurant space. As a tech specialist building a tech company, I asked him a bit more about what it means to build a tech product. Give us the 101, Jonathan.
Tech, I mean, there's many different fields like programmer / engineer. When people think of engineer, usually you think of someone who builds things, right? Like physically builds things. So usually when you're talking about programmers, you can sometimes call them like software engineers. So like they're engineers who build computers, software. When you hear people say engineers and they're a tech company, they're like software engineers. So it's not like those people wearing the hard hats and then like going to construction, like those type of engineers. So what we do is, oh man, how to explain software is like.
As someone who is a non-technical entrepreneur, I found it so helpful how Jonathan broke down the reframing of how we see hardware and software technology. Storytelling is indeed important.
Basically, the computer is just like a device, something that needs instructions. And imagine you're typing in Word and you're typing Microsoft Word and you're just typing a bunch of instructions down, like go left, go right, go left, go right, like literally instructions down, but more complicated when you write programs. But you take this like sheet of instructions and you give it to the computer, and then the computer just looks at it and just says, okay, I understand, and they do the task. Now, there's billions and billions of these tasks happening in your computer, all these different tasks that you're telling the computer. Like a simple click of a button, that turns into an instruction that goes to like the central computer, and the computer looks at the instruction and then they execute it. So a software engineer, computer programmer, they're synonymous. What they do is they write these instructions and they basically mask what you do on the computer and turn that into like these instructions. So like if you go click on a button, like how do you translate that action into something that the computer can understand? And that's like the layer in which the software engineer comes in. So that's what a software engineer is.
So to make any action I take on my computer to feel smooth, there are thousands of instructions and paths that were created behind the scene. This reminds me of how in our last product development episode, both guests spoke about why the product design matters. If the software engineers are deciding how the instructions and the steps are decided, then how you experience the journey as a user will be impacted by the logic of what the engineer has thought. This is why having the right partner is key. But Jonathan reminds us that you don't have to know everything from the beginning. In fact, that was the very thing that helped him and his team at the beginning when building FiscoNote 8 years ago.
I can tell you, I didn't really know in terms of building the technology, I had no clue what we were doing. Like I had absolutely no clue what we were doing. And because it was like machine learning and natural language processing, it required like professors to kind of help us in a lot of research papers. And just to give the audience context, what we did was we did data analytics over government data. So we were doing machine learning, natural language processing over government data sets that were all public. And then we'd sell that data to companies. I would say that when we talk to certain people, they'll be like, oh, that's really difficult to do. Or like, that's probably not possible. But, like we were like, okay, well, we don't care. We're just going to do it anyways. And then we kind of just make stuff up along the way. Things didn't really work half the time. But, we sold the vision, we sold the dream. Tim was my partner, Tim was really good at it. And then eventually, because of that, we were able to hire better talent to come in and help us. But like, it's like you have to get over that first threshold? Like, how do you build something that you're unable to build? Well, you have to believe in it so much that, you kind of just edge yourself up there. And that's actually what happened. Like, I really didn't know what I was doing back then. But if I was an expert in it, I probably would have just given up and be like, it's probably not feasible, and move on to the next thing.
Tell me more. So are you saying not knowing is a bliss? I thought being a serial entrepreneur would help you build your next company.
So a lot of investors, they want to invest in experienced entrepreneurs, people who like serial entrepreneurs. So how can the new folks, the newbies, get investment or get people to trust them or even get clients to trust them, right? So my counter argument to that is like, it's actually sometimes it is a negative to be a serial entrepreneur. There are cons. There are cons. And there are two cons actually. The con is you lose that naivety that actually led you to be successful in your first successful venture. So I didn't realize this until later, but like a lot of the dumb things that you did, the naivety that you have in a certain industry, that is actually very powerful fuel for you to keep going or like keep chasing after your dreams, right? Oftentimes you see a lot of these disruptors not by experienced people in that industry. They're by people who are just completely new in the industry. And it's because they don't know what's impossible. They don't know. And that naivety is actually really, really important when you start your startup. And then people ask me like, where to start a company, would you do things differently? And I'd be like, I would do all these things differently. But wait, when I actually think about it, those stupid things that we did are the reason why we got this far.
All the small things that get you this far. If you think about this for a moment, it makes sense. When you don't know what the limit is, the possibilities are endless. This is how I also felt in my journey as an entrepreneur. Not knowing what challenges would be was both tough and liberating. Because you simply don't know. You'll be more willing to at least give it a try. I love Jonathan's reminder on this because it goes back to all of our guests. It doesn't matter how you get started. Everyone has a chance, whether you come from a tech background or not. I asked Jonathan if he has any other advice to share as someone who mentors a lot of entrepreneurs today. He spends about an hour each week responding to notes and calls he gets from aspiring entrepreneurs seeking advice.
The thing that matters the most is, and this is very cliche, is you're going to be running into roadblocks every single day. And you just solve them. And you can't let it affect you. You can't let it stop you. And it's just going to be constantly like for the next X years that you're doing this company, every single day, something bad is going to happen. Now, so as someone who's very experienced right now, I can tell you that there's shit going on every single day, every couple hours, something is on fire somewhere. And to the point, I've gotten so used to it that it's just like a numbing feeling. It doesn't even matter anymore, that I just solve it. Okay. Now, when you get into this mindset, honestly, nothing's impossible. You approach it like, if it doesn't work, we try this thing, right? You cannot give up. When you get to the point where you're used to this, that is a good sign because you're just going to keep going and going and going, and there's nothing to stop you.
Do not give up, indeed. This is so important. I admit, I have days where I end up feeling over the moon and others where I feel crushed, being misunderstood, and feeling exhausted putting out fires all day. But choosing how to stand back up again to tell the tale is key. This is why Jonathan says out of the 6 previous ideas he had before he started FiscoNote, the reason why FiscoNote succeeded most was because the team member did not give up. They proceeded to build FiscoNote while others did not even become a company. So while you are listening to this, because you are looking to start your company or already on the journey to building your company, I hope this reminds you that you are where you are. Don't let the shiny objects limit you or distract you. Focus on your why, your customer, and how you want to solve. And don't give up. Because of your resilience, someone will benefit from what you create and what you solve. Thank you to my friends Marcus Bullock, Jonathan Chen, Deshauna Spencer, Jan Wong, and Kimberly Moore for sharing your story to entrepreneurship as a tech founder. I hope this also gave you the courage to know you can make a difference without needing to be in Silicon Valley. Many are, and we need all of you to do what you do in all the cities in this world. So let us know your journey and stories. Speaking of impact, next week we'll be catching up with some friends in a field where every decision indeed makes a ripple effect in all that we do. Politics. Who works in politics, what drives them, and how do you succeed? Curious to learn more? Join me next week at our next Curious Monica episode.
Hey there, this is Ravi Ladd, one of the audio engineers at Innovators Box. I hope you're enjoying Curious Monica. A fun fact about me is that one of my other longtime passions is health and fitness. I've been on the CrossFit Kool-Aid for almost 3 years now, and I'm always curious about new ways that diet and exercise can help us lead healthier lives. The show is brought together by our awesome team, producer Saren O, audio engineers Sam Lamer and myself, Kelly Gravo on marketing, website designer Akriti Pandey, graphic designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. Curious Monica is hosted and directed by the curious woman herself, Monica Kang, founder and CEO of Innovators Box. To continue the curiosity and creativity of the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We'd love to hear what you're curious about and ideas for what mysteries Monica can uncover in our future episodes. See you next week.
This is your host, Monica King at Innovators Box. I'll see you again soon.